Everywhere we looked, in the air, on the track, in the mud, or on the street, we found great bikes. What makes a motorcycle great? Depends on who you talk to.
Good machines. How do you pick one?
From top to bottom. You know, they've been great motorcycles since the beginning.
I couldn't pick out one. They're just like women. There's such a variety of them.
Adrenaline junkies go for flat-out speed. Handling ability is another criteria. The ability to take a turn at speed without producing something riders call road rash.
He's down, and millions of viewers see for themselves just what it's like to crash a racing motorcycle.
Power-hungry types look for big engines pumping out lots of BHP, brake horsepower. Sex appeal is another factor. Killer looks are sometimes all a bike needs. Every generation of motorcycle enthusiasts has their own candidate for greatness. It might be a 1938 Indian with a suicide clutch, a 40s Harley. Its revolutionary featherbed frame brought the 50s Norton Manx to the front of the pack. British Triumphs and Italian Ducatis helped make the 1960s great. Each evolutionary jump produced great motorcycles. Today, when it comes to jumping, there's no bike like the Yamaha YZ250.
YZ250 Yamaha, in my opinion, is the best bike ever built.
Jeremy McGrath is often referred to as the Michael Jordan of motorcycling. And it's not just because of his YZ250 hang time. Supercross racing is the brash stepchild of motocross, a European racing tradition. Back on the continent, racers get down and dirty on courses laid out over natural terrain. In the US, it all takes place in TV-friendly arenas. For most of the last decade, McGrath has completely dominated the world of supercross racing. 74 individual wins, 7 overall titles, and 2 world championships. When Jeremy McGrath talks motorcycles, it makes sense to listen.
It's been 12 years for me as a professional, so technology's definitely come a long way. I feel I'm on the best bike now.
With all his endorsements, video games, television, and movie deals, McGrath can afford to act casual while pointing out the custom goodies on his bike. These are things any local dirt biker would give their eye teeth for.
$30,000 fork.
A $30,000 shock-absorbing front fork? It seems Yamaha and Team McGrath are very interested in keeping Jeremy's bones as unbroken as possible. Each racer demands a different bike setup. Factoring in body size, proportions, racing style, each bike is given a fit and feel unique to its rider. Skip Norfolk gives the inside scoop on the McGrath setup.
He likes the motor that's, we kind of like to call it, connected to the throttle. As soon as you turn the throttle, it's making power. So you can use the clutch to get the RPM range where it makes the power, as opposed to using the clutch to generate power. But he also likes it to rev a little high, or has to have some over rev, which that kind of creates some unique things for us, because in order to get the bottom power, you kind of sacrifice the top power. So we spend a lot of time going back and forth on that.
With a growing fan base hungry for anything dirty and dangerous, motorcycling took all the boring parts out of Supercross and came up with something called freestyle. Freestyle satisfies today's requirement for extreme sports. Go fast, get air, don't die. Freestylers can launch off a jump, fly 200 feet in the air, and land safely because they are sitting on 100+ years of motorcycle engineering. With motorcycles, what goes up must come down, really hard. These Japanese bikes represent the latest attempt to soften the blow. Considering that the first wave of motorized two-wheelers were built on rigid frames, affectionately called bone crushers, motorcycles have come a long way. On the YZ250, the rear suspension system has a fully adjustable shock, allowing the swing arm to travel 12 inches before bottoming out. The front fork features 11.8 inches of face-saving travel. What does all this mean? The Yamaha YZ250 is an impact-absorbing monster.
Yeah, baby!
That's very nice. That's the shot, guys.
The rewards of risking life and limb on the freestyle circuit?
Okay, we got it.
A Vogue photography shoot on a California beach. Just pop a few wheelies while leggy models hold on for dear life.
It's actually very cool like this. It's very cool.
I'm not very photogenic to begin with, so it's kind of weird, like chilling out here having people take your picture.
My job doesn't suck. My life's pretty funny. I find it myself in places sometimes doing things that I never would have imagined.
It's all good for Trevor Vines and his freestyle buddies. As professional athletes in a sexy and dangerous new sport, there's perks, free bikes, and a lot of fun. All they have to do is hit the dirt and launch. They call it going big. Trevor Vines holds the honor of being the first ever factory-supported freestyle, or FMX rider.
Yamaha YZ250 works great for freestyle. Pretty much comes from the factory ready to go. We don't have to do too much. I stiffen the suspension up a little bit and throw these skins on, put a pro circuit pipe and silencer on it, and just run it. The engine's a two-stroke, 250cc. Basically run it stock, and it works awesome. Second gear will get you 75, 80 feet over pretty much whatever you need to, and they're pretty durable. I've put a couple top ends in it a year, and that's about it. This right here is the back shock. That's all we have. We got about 12 inches of suspension in between here. This takes it all up. This takes all the big blows from the jumps. That coil, it's actually nitrogen charged, and there's oil inside there. It's a pretty complex reservoir that definitely helps us do our job. Without that, we couldn't be jumping 200 feet.
The bar hop, where he comes all the way up over the top of the bar. That was a Cordova, a cliffhanger. The one-handed Superman seat grab. There's a stale fish, where he brings one foot through. That was just a crappy jump.
Well, we used to go out and just have fun between practice sessions. You know, I used to race, and a lot of the guys at freestyle raced, and we came from, you know, just going out and pounding out motos and practicing a lot. We get sick of it, a little bit bored. You want to go out and have some fun. You go hunt some big jumps and just have fun and free ride. Really? And just whip it, turn it.
It's fun, but the landing's kind of hard.
Yeah, I like the right one better. Dude, I land perfect. Yeah, if I do it, hitting the left one, but going kind of straight. Since we're all traveling around together, pretty much the same group of guys every weekend. You know, if we have any bike problems or any type of problems, you know, we all kind of help each other out. And I did 46 events last year, and most of these guys did, you know, close to that too. So we see each other a lot, so we're definitely on good terms, and we just like to hang out and have fun. We all got this in common. We love to jump dirt bikes.
I've been riding for about 16 years. I started racing when I was 4, just escalated from there. 20 years old now, and I just enjoy riding. It's really fun. I can do whatever I want. There's nobody telling me what to do, no limits really, unless it's something I put on myself, so it's good. One jump today was like 180. It's good hitting a jump that fast when you carry that much speed into the lip. It's kind of scary, but once you're up there, it's all quiet and peaceful, and you just float forever. It's good.
You know, we know what we're doing. It's kind of a controlled feeling, but it's still, that 200-footer we were hitting today was pretty unbelievable. I felt like you could do anything up there. Just you try to block out the fact that you can cartwheel all the way down the hill. The landing, you pretty much know after you took off that if it's going to be okay or not. It's more or less a comfort zone more than anything. You know what you can and can't do.
When I'm doing big tricks, I'm not really thinking anything, and just throw it and just go big.
Oh my Lord.
Being that it's so dangerous, you know, it definitely takes a different mentality, a different skill level. And, you know, we've all been riding motorcycles for a long time, most of us, most of our lives, and, you know, I think that helps, you know, bring people together. We all have the same grounding that keeps us connected.
Coming up, the story of one man who went up against the biggest manufacturers and stood the world of motorcycles on its head. At the Barber Vintage Motorcycle Sports Museum in Birmingham, Alabama, one of the greatest chapters in motorcycling is being reconstructed.
You're going to have to take your friendly reminder off of this gas tank.
Yeah, well, better safe than sorry.
They are carefully assembling one of the rarest motorcycles in the world, a Briton. One of only 10 Briton motorcycles in existence. Champion racer Chuck Honeycutt and museum mechanic Joe Bruton prepare the legendary bike for a run around the track.
Yeah, I'm in. This is just about the only one left running, isn't it? Everyone else has put theirs up?
I think so, yeah.
Well, I'm glad we still get to play with ours.
Joe is right. This is the only roadworthy Briton left. The rest have been put out to pasture as pampered showpieces in private collections.
There's nothing like the sound of a Briton at 12,000 RPM.
If only a handful were ever built, and only one of them still running, why does an obscure racing bike that looked like it jumped out of a tropical fish tank qualify as one of the world's greatest motorcycles?
All right. Perfect.
Because of one man, New Zealander John Britton, a soft-spoken genius who single-handedly took on the world's largest motorcycle makers and beat them in his own garage. The year is 1991. The place, Daytona Speedway. The red-blooded American capital of motorized racing. It's the home of the stock car Super Bowl, NASCAR's Daytona 500, and it's where the biggest races in U.S. motorcycling take place. Britton took a Ducati engine, lashed it to a chassis of his own design, and traveled halfway around the globe to race it in Daytona's Battle of the Twins. He shocked the racing world by taking second place. But it wasn't good enough for a man who designed and built his own house and had been restoring, rebuilding, and racing motorcycles since he was a wee little Kiwi. He went back to New Zealand and challenged himself to do the impossible. Returned to Daytona the following year with a motorcycle completely of his own design.
He decided he'd start from first principles and just go absolutely from the beginning without any thought of what had been before. By being able to do the whole thing from scratch, I think he was able to be right on that cutting edge.
The first thing he did was build a wireframe model of the motorcycle he already had running through his mind.
If I've got any talent at all, it's probably I'm pretty good at visualising a finished product before it exists. I can visualise a motorbike pretty well detailed before it's built. My other forte is knowing the shortcuts. I'm very good at cheating, cheating my way through something to keep the cost down.
Boy, body work with air going through it. I don't know of any other motorcycle that's been smart enough to do that. The way the downforce, where they've incorporated the ground effects on a motorcycle, and with the wings being in the middle of the bike, pushes the whole motorcycle down at speed.
Aerodynamics was the key. Mostly ignored by other motorcycle manufacturers, Britton found design inspiration in the world of Formula One.
I'm trying to get an air supply into that low pressure area. So it's coming through that ducting there, through the radiator, cooling the engine, and then out into this low pressure area.
Like their race cars, he would use airflow to keep his bike glued to the track. No one had ever done this before on a motorcycle. For John Britton, it was easy to break the rules. They were just like the nearest motorcycle factory, thousands of miles away. Necessity being the mother of John's invention, he made do with what was lying around. He cast the housing and other parts of the engine in his wife's kiln.
Believe it. It's not water. Excuse me. Get some more water from the swimming pool.
Overall, he manufactured by hand a mind-numbing 6,000 separate parts and pieces.
You might be happy, boys. This represents like 4 months' work building these plugs. It's taken 4 months. I reckon it's doing bloody well. Carbon fibre's all.
For the frame, John went with a combination of steel and carbon fiber, which is extremely light and very strong. It was not, as he discovered, fireproof.
Oh, interesting. Interesting concept.
With 3 months until Daytona, the clock was beginning to tick a lot louder.
Oh, just so far behind, Harry. It's like you're freaking me out, actually. Dangerously behind.
It was always the last minute push. Things were never ready, 2 months in advance, the testing all done and all packed up and ready to go. It was always the night before. Sometimes they were still out on the track testing that last change he wanted to make.
Finally, with D-Day 6 weeks away, a sleep-deprived, nerve-wracked John Britton prepared to watch his homegrown high-tech baby take its first racing steps. Test driver Chris Holder hit the throttle. Then the unimaginable occurred. The carbon fiber down tube snapped in two. Britton had miscalculated. The frame was too light for his torque-heavy engine.
Oh, that was the worst experience. It was a devastating thing for me. I just about gave up. I had given up for 6 or 8 hours. I'd canned the whole project. Climbed back on the horse and kept on going, really. We felt, well, we'd come so far, and within a few weeks we had made a slightly safer version of what we'd designed, and we've had absolutely not a jot of problems with it ever since.
Daytona Speed Week, 1992. 1 year after vowing to return with a bike of his own creation, John Britton was back with a motorcycle like no other.
Arriving at Daytona with the big bike manufacturers with their triple semi-trailers and everything very beautiful, and there's the Britton in one box, one stainless crate, So we kind of felt small.
But as soon as word got out, Britton's bike was big news. The bike was all the buzz.
Check the swinging on it. I mean, this thing is so exotic. It's got to be the ultimate new, it's got to be the idea, huh?
That is the most awesome motorcycle here in Daytona. Absolutely.
A mechanic's dream, that's what it is.
But the motorcycle gods seemed determined to make John pay for his bold creation. On a final test run the day before its Battle of the Twins racing debut, a cracked cylinder sleeve put the Briton out of commission. With the mechanics party going full blast in his borrowed garage space, John set up shop to try and fix his broken dream.
It's good not to panic, but just be resourceful.
A homemade remedy of soldering and brazing brought the cracked cylinder back to health, and the next morning, the Briton V1000 motorcycle roared back to life. With absolute amazement, John watched his two-wheeled namesake shoot to the front of the pack, settling into second place before hitting the first turn. There was no doubt, the one-off from down under can run with the big boys. The driver has a hard time keeping the front wheel down in any gear.
You watch us kids up here. You watch, we've got more power here, you watch.
The Briton racer pulls up alongside the seasoned frontrunner and pops an in-your-face wheelie.
Far out, did you see that?
It's a moment of triumph. Briton, the new bad boy on the block, announcing to the world right here with the Ducatis, Hondas, and Yamahas, I can match up with anything. Then, on lap 16, silence. The motor dead and unresponsive. After running in first, it would finish last. Britain was shattered.
Broke down, Sammy.
Yeah, that was very unfortunate. But we were trying things that were just so avant-garde, so untried and so brave at the time.
It's incredibly fast, and I know John Britton's going to head back to New Zealand and build another.
In the cruelest of all ironies, on a motorcycle with every part single-handedly designed, machined, and manufactured, it was a $5 battery cable bought at a local New Zealand hardware store that did him in.
Thanks. Thanks very much.
The setback proved to be temporary. The Briton went on to turn heads and take checkered flags all around the world. It even made it back to Daytona to capture the elusive Battle of the Twins race.
We've had a lot of small victories in amongst the efforts, you know, and they're all very little moments, special moments, lots of them.
In a history long and rich, no other motorcycle can boast of such a direct line to the heart and soul of its creator. Sadly, John succumbed to cancer and passed away in 1995. But the Briton lives on, and with it, the man who challenged himself and the rest of the world and won.
He's got big shoes to fill. Riding something so irreplaceable, so awesome. There's got to be nothing like it in the world.
Motorcycles have always been objects of autoeroticism. Up next, the world's sexiest bike. In 1995, the motorcycling world received a special gift, a brand new motorcycle that linked a promising future to a legendary past. For 35 years, Agusta, the Italian motorcycle maker, was the name in Grand Prix racing. Like many European motorcycle manufacturers, Agusta was swept away by the wave of cheaper and technologically advanced Japanese bikes. After shutting down in 1978, Agusta has been resurrected by an Italian conglomerate. Claudio Castiglione, the man behind the comeback of Ducati, pulled out all the stops for Agusta's new flagship bike, the F4.
Let me say that I consider Ferraris like the ultimate dream. Our goal is to make a Ferrari on two wheels. Nobody has ever done it before.
The heart of the F4 is its four-cylinder 16-valve engine, capable of reaching 13,000 RPMs and a top speed of 175 miles per hour.
The aerodynamics of this bike are extraordinary. This is a four-cylinder 750cc bike, and the engine is narrower than a 125cc single-cylinder.
The F4 Oro achieves greatness through the sum of its parts. The powerful engine is the shortest stroke 750cc four-cylinder ever built. The frame matches lightweight chrome moly tubing with a tricked-out cast magnesium single-sided swing arm. The overall effect of design and technology makes the F4 one of the sexiest, most beautiful motorcycles ever built.
The best motorcycle in the world.
One of the first to take possession of its sleek new motorcycles was none other than Giacomo Agostini. This 60-year-old native of Bergamo, Italy, delicately caressing the throttle to his F4, is arguably the best motorcycle racer of all time.
And it's fantastic bike because the line and also the performance of the frame of the engine is very good.
Final preparations are made for something that still gives this former Grand Prix champion a simple thrill: a motorcycle ride around the Italian countryside. Giacomo Agostini is a revered figure in the motorcycling world. To see him once again ride an Agusta motorcycle at speed is enough to bring tears to any fan's eyes.
Giacomo Agostini. Oggi quella moto e molte altre della stessa marca fanno parte di una collezione privata.
In all of sport, there is probably no more successful marriage of man and machine than Agusta and Agostini. Of his 15 years as a racer, Agostini spent 12 of them on an MV Agusta. Giacomo's trophy room bears testament to the most impressive career in racing history.
$363 race win and 112 Grand Prix win.
How good was Agusta's #1 son? In all his years of competition, in the thousands of races he rode, some where others died, Agostini was never involved in a serious crash. This is the spirit and legend that helps fuel the hand-built MV Agusta of today.
We sat down with Tamburini, the head designer of the F4 and other beautiful bikes, and asked ourselves how we could have 4 exhaust pipes that would remind you of a church organ. It was a style challenge, but we succeeded.
When the project came here in '94, we made a lot of modifications because we tried to transfer the philosophy of racing, peculiarities of a racing engine into this engine. In fact, this is the only inline 4-cylinder 4-stroke engine with a cassette gearbox, which means that you can easily take out the gearbox and change the gears for a racing use, for a racetrack use. This is the only engine in which you can completely assemble the gearbox and test it outside of the engine before the assembly.
Each engine goes through rigorous testing, running it flat out for extended periods of time.
This is the test bench where we make durability tests. This is the most interesting area of the situation, where you can see revs and power and torque and fuel consumption. So now the engine is revving more than 13. And usually the engine runs for about 150 hours and it must not break and have no problems.
Success or failure are never far apart in the motorcycle business. legendary battles were fought over Grand Prix supremacy.
Count Augusta was so paranoid about the Japanese getting his technology, at the end of every year he would grind up the race bikes in the parking lot, literally. He'd crush them up and pave them into the parking lot. That's the reason there's only so very, very few of those left. That was really the heyday of the GP wars, when Honda was really going to it and neck.
By the 1980s, Grand Prix racing was reduced to a two-bike battle, Yamaha versus Honda.
At the checkered flag, Lawson's winning margin was almost 5 seconds.
I raced Grand Prix motorcycles in Europe for 10 years, so I know a thing or two about power-to-weight ratio.
In the 1980s, Eddie Lawson raced for Team Yamaha in the prestigious 500cc Grand Prix class. Eddie won 4 world titles, the only American to ever do so.
Eddie Lawson, a second a lap slower than Spencer in practice, moved through on the inside of Haslam to go second at the first corner. The 1985 season was
When it comes to picking one of the world's great motorcycles, Eddie's still a team player.
After getting off race bikes, that you can get on a production bike and get that kind of thrill.
Subtle and refined it's not. The VMAX gets by with a massive water-cooled engine bolted to a sturdy frame.
It's amazing to have a V-boost system on this thing that after 6,000 you crack the throttle open and it'll just burn the tires.
Never considered a great handler, the VMAX garners kudos with its stunning straight-line performance.
It's truly one of the most powerful bikes out there, and I think it's one of the best bikes Yamaha's made.
If Lawson had a match on the GP circuit, it was fellow American Freddie Spencer.
The Spencer-Lawson battle was pulling the pair away from the rest of the field. Spencer, the leader. And Lawson
In 1985, fast Freddie Spencer had a year that might never be equaled. He won 7 out of 11 Grand Prix races and set 9 track records.
Spencer's winning margin was more than 14 seconds over Lawson, and the pair were now level pegging on 27 points each at the top of the championship table. One very special spectator was delighted at the result, Mr. Honda. A jubilant Spencer.
Even though his racing days are behind him, Spencer's choice for one of the world's greatest motorcycles is hardly what you would expect from a former speed demon. Freddie's greatest? A 2001 Honda Goldwing.
This machine, the GL 1800, 2001 model, is considered by many to be the greatest motorcycle, touring motorcycle especially, of all time. You strip away all the bodywork here, it looks like a sport bike. Now why did Honda do that? Well, for a couple of reasons. One is they don't want you to think this machine is just for your father or grandfather. And after riding the bike, it's incredible how much feel this bike gives you. When Honda came out with the original Goldwing in 1975, it was way ahead of its class. This machine had dual disc brakes in the front, single disc in the rear, a 1000cc motor, large capacity fuel tank, and was way ahead of its class as far as comfort and to be able to ride for long distances.
Freddie Spencer, Eddie Lawson, Giacomo Agostini. 3 great racers on 3 great motorcycles. "90 miles north of Los Angeles, in the middle of a frying pan called the Mojave Desert, lies Willow Springs Raceway. The American Historic Racing Motorcycle Association is sponsoring a 2-day event featuring vintage motorcycles in all classes and categories. A good place to continue searching for the world's greatest motorcycles.
that better than Harley Davidson or what?
The man dissing Harleys is Doc Batzleer, a 3-time winner at Daytona and a bike connoisseur.
1936 Bonneville Sport Scout, 45 cubic inch, hand shift with a suicide foot clutch.
The bike he is straddling is 66 years old and bears a name that still redlines heartbeats.
I have several Indians. The Sport Scout was a small block Chevy of the era. They got it right.
Doc was the national #1 ranked racer 2 times in his career. Now he rides his Indians on the vintage circuit and proudly shows off pictures of his 10-year-old daughter.
She can't start it, but she can ride it. And she saved her money, and she assembled the clutch, the cams. She painted it and primed it. She wasn't so excited a lot of times. There's a bunch of knuckle busting. But when she rode it and took off and didn't kill it, I was the proudest father there ever was. I was so happy I did a somersault. It's harder to race one of these at 105 mile an hour than it is a super bike at 165. Because this is the only suspension we have, is this right here. This spring, and this is our adjustment. That's the high-tech adjustment.
Best motorcycle ever made. My opinion, 69 Triumph Bonneville. One of the nicest handling bikes of all time, plus a great looker. These are some of my Triumph tank collection. These are all new tanks, what we call NOS, which is new old stock. And
the walls of Rick Erickson's bike shop in upstate New York pay tribute to his favorite two-wheeler.
This is the bike I rode to Woodstock in 1969. Looks a little different now. It doesn't have a big dent in it.
Long hair and Triumphs seem to go hand in hand.
I was the first one to actually have ABC leathers at that time, make me some colored leathers, and went on the East Coast, and all these people got freaked out, man. You know, he showed up with long hair, leather hats and beads and stuff, and they're the California hippie, you know, and people blew their minds.
Eddie Mulder is one of California's golden boys of motorcycling. A dirt track racer without equal, Eddie wound up in the AMA Hall of Fame. Like many of his generation, there is only one bike.
Everybody wanted a Triumph Bonneville. You know, in them days, if you didn't have a Triumph, you weren't cool.
The British-made Triumph is one of motorcycling's legendary names. Triumph began life as a bicycle manufacturing firm and started making two-wheelers back in the early 1900s. Over the years, they have made singles, twins, triples, and 4-cylinders, scooters and racers. But the 60s Triumphs are the ones most coveted by the U.S. riders.
It originally started with a 1-carbureted motorcycle, which was like a Thunderbird or a TR6, and then they went into the Bonnevilles and made more of the hopped-up version of a motorcycle with 2 carburetors is what's considered a Bonneville.
The combination of Mulder and a stripped-down factory Bonneville proved to be a winning one for the overseas bike maker.
And rode professionally for the Triumph factory for 13 years and was the only man in history to ever win all 3 national TTs back-to-back on a Triumph Bonneville.
1983 saw the last of the Bonnevilles roll off the assembly lines. Triumph becoming yet another victim of modern motorcycling economics. Then along came John Bloor, a British real estate developer with deep pockets. He bought the trademark name, and in 1990, brand new Triumphs began to roll out of the factory. Cosmetically, the new Bonnevilles look much like the old ones. Internally, the engine incorporates a lot of new technology.
Motorcycles are like harem girls. A man must have several.
It just gets into your blood and you can't get rid of it.
It can become an obsession, yeah. You have to control it and, you know, control your budget carefully and make sure that you don't go overboard in terms of time and money.
There are lots of people with 100 motorcycles, so you'll run into guys, yeah, they got them out here. Let me show you my garage out in the back. And there's 100 damn motorcycles. Yeah, just can't get rid of them.
Virgil Ealing is a great example of someone following their motorcycle bliss.
I started collecting probably 20 years ago. I now have 80 to 100 bikes, and after a while it's hard to count. I had space and bikes, and so I made it a museum.
Hardly your typical grease monkey.
I'm a PhD in physics, though, which has nothing to do with motorcycles.
He recently cashed out of his multi-million-dollar medical instrument company. Nowadays, he and his son Jeff ply the vintage bike circuit. Virgil would nominate his 1938 Gilera as one of the world's greatest motorcycles.
That engine is probably one of the most famous four-cylinder engines that was built for motorcycles, and so just its shape I like. From a physics standpoint, it's always how much air can you get into the engine in 1 second. It's the size of the engine, it's the speed you run it at, and so these engines are built to run at higher RPM. The more cylinders you have, the smaller they can be, therefore the faster you can run them. The faster you can run them gives you higher horsepower, and so horsepower is the game. But the more cylinders you have, the more parts can go wrong, and so you have parts going wrong and horsepower, and somehow you still have to finish the race. And so it takes years and years to make something like that get to where it's competitive. All right, we're gonna go racing.
On the vintage racing scene, the people tend to have as much character as the motorcycles.
No, I've been riding ever since I was 15.
Aren't you too old to be doing this stuff?
Fuck yeah.
Well, good luck.
Larry Poons puts it on the line whenever he can. A racing junkie, his creaky van is a familiar sight in the vintage pits. He's also a familiar sight in museums and art galleries. Larry Poons is a well-respected, world-renowned painter.
You just do your best. Even though you can't paint over a race, like you can paint over a bad painting, you learn from a race just as you learned from your last painting.
This race was hardly a Poons masterpiece. He didn't even make it around the first lap.
Too much gas on the first lap. Yeah, the back end stepped out. Then I saved it, but then the bike was going across the track. And I went across the track, and that's when I dropped it. It's stiff. Ah! Oh, maybe it's just a slight separation in the shoulder, I'm not sure. Well, at least it ain't broke.
Larry Poons made his name in the world of abstract painting, but when it comes to motorcycling, he's strictly a realist.
There's 3 rules, right? There's don't ride over your head, everybody falls down, everybody falls down. That's the 3 rules.
So many bikes deserve mention. Ducati, Matchless, BMW, BSA, Moto Guzzi. There's greatness in each of these names.
As I'm wheeling it out of the crate, and the guy there says, "So you got a lot of old motorcycles?" And I said, "Well, not anymore. I sold them all to buy this one." And he said, "Wow, I can see why. That's the business."
The business British-American Kevin Morehouse is talking about is the vintage motorcycle he just spent all his money on, a 1953 Norton Manx.
This was the first of the double overhead camshaft Manxes. The only improvement they really made from this point on was they played with the stroke to get more revs and a little more power.
The 53 Manx marks an important transition from rigid frame to suspension.
This was the first bike to really have a swim arm that came off of a pivot point and was attached by springs. When the featherbed got its nickname, basically, was the works rider at the time went out and tested it, and he said it's like riding a featherbed because the difference was that great. In its time, it was one of the best bikes.
VOR is one of the best new bikes to appear in recent years on the European motocross circuit. After only 3 years, the VOR racing team has posted some impressive wins, including the 2001 Enduro Championship.
We produce toys and we produce dreams.
For VOR president Massimo Monti, motorcycles are objects of passion.
Racing is in our blood. On Sunday, we race pretty much throughout the world, and on Monday, here, everybody talks about it. And we take a lot of pride in our achievements, and the riders are family.
I think VOR is competitive, but well, I have a little things we can change. Well, the team need work because, well, it's not like a Honda or Yamaha. VOR I have 3 years racing, so, but for 3 years it's real good.
Like a mud-splattered David, VOR has shown it can compete and sometimes win pitted against the Goliaths of the racing world.
Motorcycle manufacture is a tough job because the competitors around us are monsters, are very big, are gigantic compared to our size. The only place where this can be done, in my view, is Italy, because Italy is a very special place where the motorcycle industry has not disappeared.
Massimo Monti is capitalizing on Italy's long-standing love affair with motorcycles. Unlike England or the rest of Europe, Italy can still boast of a wealth of motorcycle craftsmen with a broad knowledge of motorcycle mechanics and engineering. VOR motorcycles feature new state-of-the-art technology combined with an old-school concept of building from scratch under one roof. Their 4-stroke single-cylinder engines have achieved what most agree is the ideal capacity for off-road racing.
The gears really are linking the crankcase to the camshaft.
Other refinements, gear-driven distribution, forward kickstarters, hydraulic clutches, and weld-free swing arms put VOR on the envy list of many other factory riders.
If we assemble the bikes in the proper way, if we really progress, then we're going to give the riders a better bike through which he could achieve better results. So it's a love game, and I think that without this love effect, probably VOR would not exist.
VOR is off to a good start. While not yet cleaning up on the race circuit, they have established themselves as a motorcycle to be reckoned with. In days to come, the VOR is sure to be somebody's choice for one of the world's greatest motorcycles.